evening, everyone. Welcome to this very normal video, where we're all going to be very normal, right? Right? No, I will not be explaining myself. That's for another day, another time. Well, all I'll say is that I enjoy Mahito for what he is. Silly. Anywho, shout out to my friend who went to Japan a while back and bought all of this for my birthday. So yes, I was gifted everything without having to pay, but I'll still mention the prices just for reference. Also, as a little disclaimer to the one Jujutsu Kaisen fan who's watching, please keep it normal. No death threats, name calling, crazy assumptions, or any of that tomfoolery. Thank you! Let's start off by taking a look at the goods. A can badge, an acrylic keychain, and a rubber keychain. They were bought at Surugaya for 180 yen each, which is around $1-ish at the time of recording. First up is the Pita Deformed Jujutsu Kaisen can badge. This line of goods is characterized by having characters look like they're being squished against glass or some other type of clear surface, since pita sounds similar to pitari, which is a Japanese onomatopoeia for something pressed tightly together. I think that's where the name comes from, at least. Mahito looks especially devious here, man spreading with one side of his face and arm pressed against an invisible wall, kinda like he's observing you from a tiny glass jar. The background is still bluish gray with paint splotches of varying colors scattered about. There's also smaller dots throughout to give more texture, so to speak. On top of all that, we have pita in a scratchy font with every letter altering from a lighter to darker grayish blue. The text Mahito also appears at the bottom, with a black bar that cuts across some of the illustration. Although these were purchased secondhand, the badge itself seems pretty new, without a scratch or dent in sight on the front and the back, which has a safety pin for fastening. Next up, from the same series, we have the Pita Deformed Jujutsu Kaisen episode acrylic keychain. The design this time depicts Mahito sitting to the side, legs crossed with a book in his hand. He looks a bit less freakish. If anything, he seems more surprised, like he's studying himself rather than tapping on your glass enclosure. The background consists of scattered triangles, maintaining the same light dark bluish gray color scheme from the previous badge. The signature Pita text is off to the left this time, in a bold white font outlined in black. Unfortunately, the print and acrylic isn't double-sided, however, the keychain is in pretty good, if not new, condition, just like the other one. Finally, our last goodie is the Jujutsu Kaisen Onomaya Pitanko rubber mascot. This line features characters sitting or standing on their names, which is such a cute concept. This one in particular features the characters Mahito in a light grayish blue text, stacked vertically, and places Mahito himself sitting cross-legged, leaning back on the he. It's kind of funny that 2 out of the 3 goods here today depict him reading a book. I think the only time I can recall him doing so is in the episode where he's introduced. The background for the entire keychain is a weird, muted, gross burgundy purple. In my opinion, it should have been dark blue or something. Moving on to our main course. First up, we have the pretty infamous, at least to me, Mahito by Taito, which my friend picked up at Roshinban for 680 yen, or about $4-ish US. Taking a look at his box, it's entirely made out of cardboard, like most prize figures, featuring a diagonally split color blocking scheme of black and a textured blue around the entire box. The front shows a big picture of the figure in the center, as well as a box of black bold text reading Mahito on top in English. In the middle, Mahito contains one in Japanese, and on the bottom, figure, once again written in English. Off to the side is another box with the name of the series, Jujutsu Kaisen, written vertically in bold gray font. The back is mostly the same, however the Jujutsu Kaisen text is now horizontal. The left side and right side both have full-body pictures of the figure. The top features the JJK, Taito, prize figure, and Toho animation logos, and the bottom has various warnings and other information. Wowie, there's so much to say, but so little to say about him at the same time. Not gonna lie, writing this part of the script was really hard. For some reason, I just couldn't find the right words to describe my thoughts. Well, third time's the charm, they say. First of all, sculpting, it's not bad. The folds on his shirt actually look like loose flowing fabric, and the creases on his pants give them a nice texture. Although that's pretty much it for the positives. as looking closer reveals his shirt is just one solid piece of plastic. I really wish they sculpted the inside, given it's pretty loose and flowy. The stripes are also sculpted on rather than painted, giving the shirt more of a quilted appearance rather than a stitched one. I feel like printing simple white lines wouldn't be too complicated, but the sculpted pattern does seem to be like a reoccurring feature for most Mahito figures, so what do I know? His hair it's super detailed, but I feel like that kind of works against it. There's just too much going on. This really shows at the end of his ponytails and bangs where the plastic just kind of splinters off the super visible seam lines. Not to mention the way one of them is just floating over his shoulder. And, well, I gotta address the elephant in the room. His face. Oh god, where do I even begin? His mouth shape is way off, giving him duck lips, as I call them, making his smile look super wide and uncanny. His expression as well is just awful. I guess they were trying to go for a smug, evil grin, but he just looked stoned out of his mind. It's so bad to the point where I can't even tell if his right eye is legitimately printed higher, or the sculpt is just so janky his face is all over the place. At least the rest of the printed on details look nice. His stitches are depicted as thick black lines, printed cleanly with little to no disconnect at areas where they touch. In the minimal places where details are painted, such as his shoes and I believe his hairband as well, it's a bit chunky here and there, but not too bad for a $4 figure. Other than Mahito himself, a base is also included. It's a thin, shiny black circle with a swirly gray mist-like pattern printed on top. Usually, prize figures have really unflattering, simple black bases, so I'm glad this one at least has a bit of effort put into it. Almost makes up for the really awful face sculpt. Unfortunately, it still is way bigger than it needs to be, but I'll give it a pass because I like how it creates this effect of mist swirling around Mahito's figures. How ominous. Lastly, here's a quick size comparison to Nendoroid Kingu, Figma Snow Miku 2022, DFX Figure Partner Figure N by Band Presto, and lastly, LMP Yu-Gi-Oh! X Chronicles version by Sega. Next up, we have his Juo no Kata prize figure by Bandai. I believe this one was bought at Mandarake for 1,000 yen, about $6 USD, and some change. It comes with no surprise that this box is also entirely cardboard, with the front showing a 3/4 shot of this figure in the center, the Jujutsu Kaisen logo in the corner, along with Juo no Kata in a black calligraphy type lettering, and next to that in a smaller font, Mahito. The background has a papery texture with wispy ink-like lines continuing through the left side, which has another picture of the figure. The back has another picture of Mahito, as well as Yuji. Their respective names printed beside them with the letters B above Mahito's and A above Yuji's. The Juo no Kata logo once again makes an appearance written off to the left. The right and top of the box are more or less the same. And finally, you guessed it, the bottom of the box has various warnings and other information. I actually like this figure more than I thought. His face in the promo images looks super compressed and weird. He kinda has those zonked out eyes like on the first Mahito, but it's all an illusion of angles. The actual figure has a slight lean forward that gives him a foreshortening effect when looking at him from slightly above. You'd think they'd know that and take the photos at an angle that actually complements him, but I guess not. For some reason. There's also the issue that the box photos smooth out all of the small details in sculpt, which makes him look extra uncanny. Compared to the first Mahito though, this one does lack a lot of sculpted detail. His shirt is especially affected, looking more like a stiff piece of foam rather than flowy fabric. I do think the hand on hip pose adds to this by being pretty simple. However, it does work for Mahito's laid-back personality. Also, that little lean he has adds some flavor by changing his expression from relaxed to a glaring sinister one when viewed from above. This lack of detail also works pretty well in other places. The tri-tail that goes over his shoulder has a believable weight to it, rather than just floating. The simpler sculpt of his hair gives it a clean finish that the previous Mahito lacked. But the real highlight for me is that his whole torso is actually sculpted underneath his shirt. Unfortunately, I don't think he can be displayed without it, since the two pieces are fused at the shoulders. The attention to detail is still highly appreciated though. It didn't really pick up well on camera, but they even printed on his hip scars. Excuse me. I really like that they're printed in a light brownish color rather than a pitch black. It just blends in way better and makes them look more natural. Speaking of which, all the other printed details look pretty clean. I mean, besides his scars, it's just his face. Same goes for the painted areas, like the first figure, only consist of his shoes and hairbands. However, unlike the previous Mahito, these have a much cleaner finish. Yeah, they're misaligned here and there, but at the end of the day, it's barely even noticeable, and I mean, obviously, I'm not expecting scale figure quality here. The only major complaint I have is the ugly, plain matte black oval base, complete with a scratch in the middle, brand new out of the box. Yeah, I said how I feel about these earlier. Anyways, here's a quick size comparison to Nendred Kingu, Figma no Miku 2022, Taito Mahito, and lastly, LMP Yu-Gi-Oh! X Chronicles version by Sega. Honestly, I don't really have anything else to say, because, I mean, for those prices, these figures are totally worth it. Unless you're paying $30 or more for one of them. Just please be aware of prize figure prices. I'm sure in certain places you can find them for much, much cheaper. Also, Mahito is a character I'm willing to collect for, so no matter how ugly his figures are, which does seem to be the majority of them, the quality doesn't deter me. Once again, special thanks to my friend for gifting these to me, and please, please, if you're a random JJK fan stumbling onto this video, I kindly ask you not to send death threats. Maybe that's a little too overdramatic, but I have seen it happen to people who like Mahito. Mwah, mwah. Be normal out there. Love you guys. With that, good night.